I'm Helene O'Neill from the Diocese of Maitland, Newcastle. My current role up there is I'm chaplain to the Curia. In my other life, well, it's all part of the one, of course, I'm a sports chaplain at Cooks Hill Surf Lifesaving Club and also a chaplain with disaster recovery. How did I come across this sports ministry? Well, it's something I was brought up in the culture in my household, in the area I live in, Newcastle, and I've always long held the belief that how do we actually build church and life together so that one isn't separate from the other, that they are the two. And I remember when I was, my brother and I used to walk to morning mass every day, and I was pretty dirty because they wouldn't let girls on the altar service. And so I arranged for the Year 6 boys to turn up, and we'd play cricket, and then my brother would go to mass as the server, and we'd walk home together, and our parents thought we were just great. And it wasn't until one of the balls cut my chin open and I had to get all stitched up that I thought, am I going to get found out here? And the answer was yes. But so from that early day, probably the age of 10, 11, I always thought there had to be some way to marry the two together. So the opportunities come along. I think sport it's an integral part, and let's face it, it's probably the one that brings most kudos to communities, to the country as a whole. It can also be very polarising in that I think sometimes people often have the wrong impression of sport. They think, it's either about getting out there, playing the contacts, tackling, it's about having to be the best, it's about the trophy, the winning. But that's not always true. There's a role for everybody, from little kids running around little athletics, parents getting involved, the old washing of the jumpers, cutting of the oranges, right through. And I've seen and I watch so much sport at a community level by riding my bike around on weekends, and just the way parents are there with their coffee cup in their hand, sharing the stories, talking about their kids, encouragement. So I think it goes deeper than what most people think, that it's only what you see on TV. It actually starts from a very young age with little kickers, kids about 2, 3, right through. So I think it's part of our culture. It does create that community, that connection, and certainly gives people a lot of joy in their life. And sometimes we forget about those things. We forget about the joy it's actually bringing, whether it's a grandma telling her friend about how her little 4-year-old grandson scored his first goal or whatever. So it's looking holistically at it, not just at the scores that we get fed a diet of right across the weekend. Yeah, I think a lot of people live their life vicariously through any means, whatever's closest to them. But if we talk about how can you find your faith in it, have a look at some of the parallels that we can draw from that. The ability to use our gifts and talents, the ability to be with our community, be it faith or sport, the occasion to get involved. And I think that in the church, that's what we cry out for: volunteers, people who use their charisms. Sport's much the same. So there's many parallels there, and that deep passion comes from, I think it's territorial, just like churches are. Which parish do you go to? No, I live here, I don't go there. It's about getting behind a team, and that's really what we can do in parishes, get behind a team. So as I said, there's so many parallels, and if you can make your passion work in more than one area, you sort of expand your own mind, it's great for your own personal growth, and certainly great to be involved with so many other people who share, they may not share that passion, but their passion comes from being involved and being with people and seeing that, hey, I can belong here. And belonging and having acceptance are so important to us all, particularly, in an era where mental health is blown out. I think that, people, and I've seen our priest, former parish priest, had red and blue rosary beads for the Newcastle Knights. So he had it as well. And it was great because you knew you'd get a short homily that Saturday night because the Knights were playing. So yeah, there's lots of parallels there. I think the role of sports chaplain has become, such a huge field now. We're starting to see that even club sides, it isn't about the NRL or the Super Netball. They're not the ones that necessarily, they do have chaplains, but it offers people an occasion from the grassroots to do the course, put their faith into action, which I think is important. And even through surf lifesaving clubs, through whatever your sport is, it's opportunities to go along and say, how can I help? It's not about proselytising, which I think so many people fear that word evangelisation. They think that they're going to be brainwashed or moved into, somewhere where they don't really want to belong. It's not that at all. It's about being yourself. So for the church, instead of just saying, where are all the kids on a Sunday morning, and someone responding, oh, they're at Nippers, what can you do at the Nippers that can actually help those families? The refugees coming, most of them come with some sort of sporting pedigree. How can I go to the parish refugee centre and assist that way? So it isn't only about playing, and of course we can never forget people with a disability. Sport's really opened up for them now. That offers us opportunities. There's masters games, and there's people who, the older they get, the better they were, but there's occasion for them to get involved in some other capacity, either as mentor. So yeah, it offers so much for people. And, the lady who runs the canteen at the schools, she may be able to help with the local footy club or the local netball club running the canteen. So you just transfer your gifts, and you can do, and then you can become who you really want to be by knowing that you're contributing. I think the first thing is to acknowledge that these areas do exist. It isn't always about the brick building on a weekend. It's about, like I said, how does the community get involved? How can you bring them together a bit more? Maybe the church grounds, I know my parish has massive grounds. We could invite the local cricket team to practice there. Same with school grounds. Why do they lock the school gate at 3 when they've got cricket nets, netball courts and things? So it's a great opportunity for them to invite the community in to use the resources, and from there it just grows. You talk about how do we get them to know more about Christ and know more about their faith, and that's what these acts of kindness, and we look at the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Joy, and that's what sport brings to people. Faithfulness, so it might be sharing each other's passions. Love, and we all know that makes the world go round. And be it you love a sport, be it you love it with your community or whatever. So I think if we base it on existing ideas, like I say, the fruits of the Spirit or the gifts, if you like, what knowledge can we use? What wisdom is there in having people in our parish and mentoring the kids? Confirmation, for example. They come along and you generally hear in the back of the pews, oh, we'll never see them again. Well, hey, if you've had a career in sport or your grandkids are into sport, what a great way to go up to some of those young kids and say, what sport do you play? How'd you like to have a parish fun day or something? So lots of ways. It's about being creative and opening the mind. I think we can all just say, church is this and this, but really it's part of the big picture. If you cut a pie up, you don't just take, half of it and put it on one plate. You might dissect it, so it might be looking, I like to work on a pie of the 5 F's. So family, faith, food, friendship and fitness. And I don't mean running marathons, but certainly the fitness, both mental fitness, emotional and spiritual fitness, so that you can combine all those together. And who knows, it's kind of exciting. We just need to say to people, you can do it. I think one of the great examples we have is, whether or not you love the Penrith Panthers or whatever, the way at the end of the game, particularly Polynesians, come together and pray. And if there's representatives from other sides, the side they've either lost to or the side they've beaten, it's one big huddle. And I think that speaks so much, that it shows that the game isn't the only thing in their life. It isn't the most important thing. It shows it's that camaraderie. It's that thanking God for the gifts that they have. And in soccer, we see all the time when, particularly in the EPL or the overseas, they make the sign of the cross, or they blow a kiss, towards the heavens. And I think those sort of things, I don't discount them. I see here people say, show ponies or whatever. No way. They're actually saying thank you. Thank you for what you've given me. Australians aren't really always good at that, but when we see it from other cultures, I think it's important that we actually learn from them. So at the Evanglise conference, we had the pleasure of launching our sports statement, which is called Opening the Way to Christ, Pastoral Ministries Through Sport. It's a first step, but I was so overwhelmed by the support we received when we launched it, because people were saying, and they've come up to me over the last couple of days and said, this is a no-brainer. Why aren't church, doing this thing? Because kids love school. We love sport at schools. We have kids who don't really want to be at school, but they're there because they want to play football, soccer, netball at lunchtime. So and look at the career pathways now in sport. So for us taking this first step, and we look at some concepts like the grace of sport. We look at sport for all, different cultures, also disabled, masters. So every spectrum of life is really covered within this statement we've put out. I was pretty stoked to be involved, and the camaraderie that created just amongst the writing team, and Matthew and Malcolm was really special, and that's what epitomises sport for me, is that connection. So it's a case of watch this space, and this is the first step, but who knows, we may be at the MCG one day having a sport and faith conference. Imagine that, 80,000 people just sitting there dreaming. How cool is this? This all started at the Killer Place in 2024. Cheers.